friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking all about home buying, what our process looks like, some tips and tricks. I'm going to answer some of your questions. I'm going to go through like everything about our house, how much it cost, how much our down payment was, all of that good stuff, super transparent because I feel like it's a very taboo topic, and even when people talk about homes, they don't really talk about like exact numbers and like how much everything costs, and it's very overwhelming. You don't really know what's going into it. At least I didn't. I had no idea what was going on when we were buying our home, so hopefully this will be a little bit helpful for you guys. So basically I have tons of notes written down, and we're just going to go through like everything from start to finish, what our personal process was, all of that good stuff. But first, I just want to kind of share that this came with a lot of privilege. I know not everybody is in the position to buy a home, especially at our age. We have a college degree. My dad is a loan officer, so he was able to immensely help us through the process. So I know this isn't possible for everybody, but I do want to say that it is possible. I think home ownership at a young age is something that people are really scared of. And for us, it was the best decision. And if I didn't have people in my corner kind of telling me like, yes, like you can actually do this, we might not have actually bought a home, and who knows where we would live. So I did want to throw that disclaimer out there though. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. I can only speak on our experience, and yeah. Okay, so basically we started looking for a home right before we got married. It was in the very beginning of 2020, or the tail end of 2019 is when we like very casually started looking. We weren't working with a realtor. We were just looking at houses on Zillow. This was before the market was absolutely bonkers. So houses would be like on Zillow for a week or two, and you could go casually view them. Like it wasn't crazy like it is right now. So we looked at 2 different houses before we found our house. And I was just really prayerful for very specific things, a specific budget number that we were trying to stay under. And the second we walked into our house, like I feel like we knew right away, like, oh my gosh, this is the house for us. So our house that we bought was for sale by owner, and then we weren't working with a realtor. So this made for a very, I want to say easy transaction because no realtors were being paid. So it kind of worked out really well for the seller because they weren't paying our realtor, they weren't paying a realtor themselves. And realtors take, I want to say 5 to 7% of like the seller's money. So if you're buying, you can use a realtor and it doesn't cost you anything. Their commission comes from the seller, if that makes sense. So if you're coming in without a realtor, sometimes your offer looks a little bit more desirable because they don't have to pay a realtor. Realtors do a phenomenal job. I would most definitely use a realtor in this home buying market, 100%. It was a completely different story 2 years ago. So like I said, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. That was just our experience, but we did not use a realtor, and our house was also for sale by owner, so it was very, very easy. So my husband actually negotiated the deal. So it was my dad, who is a loan officer, he was helping us kind of come up with a number, but my husband actually negotiated the deal with the buyer directly, so there were no realtors involved. Like I said, they just would call each other and like negotiate over the phone, and we ended up getting the house for under asking price. So basically, once we made our offer, we had 60 days to close. That's not normal. Usually it's 30 days, but we negotiated the 60 days because the seller had to find a new house before they moved out, and it was a really great couple. I actually still know the girl to this day. She's super sweet. She's also a photographer, so that's super cool. But we closed in 60 days, so we ended up putting our offer in, I want to say mid-January, and then we ended up closing mid-March. We actually closed probably 3 days before the whole world kind of shut down, so that was a huge blessing that we were able to get our house, get in to close. Something you really don't realize, and this is kind of one of the questions that someone asked, but you have to sign so many papers. Like, this is my planner, probably like a stack double the size of this you're signing. I'm someone that likes to look over everything I sign. It would have taken me like 6 hours to look over everything. So like you start just like flipping and telling you that they'll tell you where to sign and stuff like that. But we ended up closing, I think like March 12th or something like that in 2020. Like I said, the market was so different back then. So now I know people are like buying houses without even seeing them. I know there's like bidding wars going on. So our experience was very easy. I know we are kind of sort of going through the buying experience again now, and it's completely different. Okay, so now I'm gonna talk a little bit about what we were looking for going into the home buying process. So we knew we wanted 3-bedroom, one so that we both had like an office space. So we have our master bedroom, and then we have my office and Sage's office. These obviously could be like a child's room or a guest room or something like that, but for the purpose of our family, 2 offices works best. We wanted a decent sized yard, a lot of natural light. You guys know I'm a photographer, right? So I need a lot of natural light. Close to work. So at the time I was still working up in the Ypsilanti area in Michigan, and so having it very close and accessible to like a freeway was super, super important. Now that doesn't matter, but going into the home buying process, like I was very prayerful about a very specific location, and this house fit the bill perfectly. And we wanted it to be near, like, not a major city, but near things like Chipotle, Target, Walmart, a grocery store. We're around the corner from a grocery store, which is super, super convenient. Where I grew up, literally the nearest grocery store was probably 15 minutes away. So it was really important to us to be, like, close to, like, a central location where we could do all the things we needed to do. Okay, so now a little bit about the house that we ended up getting. Our house is 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom. It's a split level design. I have a home tour if you haven't seen it, so you can go look at it. It's quite poorly done, but it kind of walks you through our whole home. It's 1,600 square feet, and we do have 2 garages, which is a really unique feature. Our one garage actually used to be the house, so it has like a kitchen and a bathroom in it, which is very, very crazy. It's super outdated, and it doesn't like function, but really big garages, so that was a super huge plus, especially now because Sage, my husband, does detailing. So that's a little bit about the house we ended up getting. Now I'm gonna touch on just the process of home buying. So like, not just our experience, but every home buying process kind of follows a blueprint to a certain extent. So first off, once you find your house, you make your offer. Usually you need to be pre-approved or approved if you're like looking for houses. So my dad's a loan officer. His name's Chris Liebig. I'll put his information down below. He's phenomenal. I'll talk a little bit about how phenomenal he really was for us later, but he is amazing. He works in the Ohio area. He's my dad. Pretty cool guy. So if you're looking for a house and you live in Ohio, definitely hit him up. So basically you negotiate your offer. If you're using a realtor, they will do all that for you. You just kind of say like, okay, what do you feel comfortable offering? You don't want to insult the seller, and right now a lot of people are offering over asking price. So just keep that in mind. Your realtor will guide you along this process, and if you're not using a realtor, find a good loan officer. They will also kind of guide you through this process. Once it was accepted, we had to do an inspection and an appraisal. So our offer was contingent on both the inspection and the appraisal, which means we were able to back out if something came back that we were like, oh, never mind, we don't want this house. Like, we didn't know that there was this problem. I don't know if offers are still happening like that because, again, like I said, the market is so crazy. I know people are buying houses sight unseen. So I don't know if you can still make it like contingent upon inspection and appraisal. I would recommend that. But again, I'm not a realtor, I'm not a loan officer. They will guide you through that whole process. So the inspection and the appraisal do cost. I want to say ours was like $600 for the appraisal and then maybe like $500 for the inspection. Wasn't a ton of money, and then we were able to get some of that back at closing. So while this was all happening, my dad was putting our loan together. And so we were very fortunate to put no money out of our pocket down on our house. So I was a first-time home buyer, and I was also a student at the time, or a recent grad. I had graduated like a year before, or a month before. Not a year. I had graduated a month prior to buying our house. So I believe our home is FHA, and we were able to get some grants for living in the state of Ohio. We were able to get some grants because I was a good student, and we were able to get some grants because I was a first-time home buyer. So many people ask me where to find these grants. I didn't find them. So again, my dad's a loan officer. Ask your loan officer or your realtor about what grants may be available to you. I know they vary by state, by age. There's so many like variables when it comes to grants. I know if you're in the military, sometimes there's a lot of grants available to you from that. So just ask your realtor, but grants is really what helped us put no money down on our house, which was, again, a huge blessing because we were able to kind of use the money that we had for furnishing the house and stuff like that. Like I said, I had just graduated college and Sage was still in college, so we didn't have like a ton of money saved up to buy. Another thing that really helped our case when we bought our house was that the seller paid the closing costs. So something you might not know about buying a house is that there are closing costs, and I want to say these are usually like 5 to 7% of the price of your house, and these are usually paid by the buyer. So if you're going in, you're buying a house, usually you're the one responsible for paying the closing costs. Back when we bought our house, it was, I want to say, a buyer's market. Our house had been on the market for a little bit, so we were able to negotiate that the seller was paying those closing costs. Again, that can be anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 depending on how much your house costs, all of that stuff. So definitely see what you can do in negotiating that. I know, again, right now, not many sellers are paying the closing costs because it's definitely a seller's market, but just something to keep in mind that you usually will be responsible for closing costs, and it can be a pretty big chunk of change. And then we signed all the papers, we got our key, and we owned the house. Okay, so now I'm going to go through all of your questions. I got a lot on Instagram, so make sure you're following me on Instagram for my next Q&A so you'll be able to ask your questions. But one of the number one questions was, how much was our down payment and how much was our house? So like I said, we paid no money out of pocket down, and our house was $137,000. Let me reiterate, we live in Ohio and this was 2 years ago. The market is completely different. Our house is worth a lot more now than it was before. And the cost of living in Ohio is so different than the cost of living on the West Coast or on the East Coast or down south. You know your area best, do some research on what the normal house kind of goes for, and that'll kind of help you set your budget. Okay, what are the things we need? What can we afford? And what do we want in a home? So another question was, what made you buy instead of rent? So when we bought our house, we were both 21, and that is really young to be making kind of that big of a commitment. But for us and our family, it just made the most sense. Where we live, the cost of like a really nice 2-bedroom apartment is probably $1,200, $1,300. And our mortgage right now is $927. And we have a whole house, we have a yard, we have 2 garages. So it just made way more sense. Plus, we really wanted to build equity in our house. So when you're renting, it's kind of like leasing a car. You might have something a little bit nicer and people are taking care of things for you. Like usually your trash is taken care of. You're not worried about like mowing the lawn and snow removal and stuff like that. So there's definitely perks to renting. However, you're not building any equity. And so we already have a lot of equity in our house because it appraised for higher than what we bought it for. So that's like automatic equity. And then with the way the market is right now, we've built a lot of equity, and with the renovations we've done, stuff like that. So again, just talk it over with your partner or just with yourself. If you're thinking about buying a house, weigh the pros and cons. For us, it made so much sense to do this, but for other people, it might not. So another question is something you weren't expecting to pay or weren't expecting how much it actually costs. I touched on this earlier, but I had no idea what closing costs were. I didn't know I would have to pay them. I didn't know anything about them. I kind of thought you just put the down payment down and bought the house. That's not the case. Sometimes your down payment and your closing costs can be like comparable in price. So our closing costs, like I said, ended up being around $5,000-$6,000, and the seller paid those. But if we were going to buy a house in today's market, we would probably be paying the closing costs. So that's just something to think about. If you're buying a house right now, that is a big chunk of change that you might have to fork up right when you close. Another question is, what are some things you wish you knew before you had a home? So honestly, we have been super, super blessed with our house. Nothing has like tragically gone wrong. You do have to fix a lot of things. I mean, you're responsible for this house. So if there's a leak in the roof, it's your job to fix it. If you need a fence, it's your job to put it up. But there hasn't really been anything super unexpected. We were pretty realistic going into the process that we would have to fix things. We did paint, we replaced a whole bathroom, like gutted it down to the studs. So we did a few renovations, and we kind of knew that we were gonna do those going into buying the house. But I guess I wish I would have known that it's not as scary as people make it seem. Like I feel like when we were buying a house, everyone was like, oh my gosh, like you're buying a house, like you're tied to that area forever, blah, 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 blah. Like that's such a big commitment. You can sell a house whenever you want. You can move whenever you want. I mean, yes, it's a big commitment, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it's a very good investment, and you're usually, not always, but usually you're not going to lose a ton of money on a house. So it's a relatively safe investment too. And I think people hype it up to be really, really scary, but for us, it made sense. I wished I could have gone back and like not been as scared or not really listened when people were like, oh my gosh, like, why are you doing this? Another question is, would you ever get into real estate? So that is a fun question. I would love to own an Airbnb or two. Sage wouldn't mind owning an Airbnb or two. So we've contemplated when we're finished with this house, just keeping it and renting it out. But I don't know if I want to do long-term rentals. I feel like Airbnb is a little more fun. I feel like you make quicker cash. It's a little bit more of like a liability because you're having different people come in all the time. But I don't know. I don't know if I do long-term rentals. I definitely would love to have an Airbnb, and who knows? I feel like real estate is so fun. Like I said, I really believe it's a great investment, and so I don't know. I feel like it could be fun. I love home decor, so I feel like that's another thing that's really fun. If you get to flip houses or something like that, you kind of get to redesign and reimagine like so many things for a home, and that would be really, really fun. And the last question is best tips for searching for your first house. So I know right now it is really hard, like I've mentioned, to buy a house. We are loosely looking for a new house ourselves, and there have been some that we've really, really loved, and before we were even able to go in and see them, they already had multiple offers. They were already under contract. So my best advice is to work with a realtor. We didn't do that, but now I think it's almost a necessity. You do have a more appealing offer if you go in without a realtor, but you just can't see houses fast enough. Like, realtors get them right away, and I feel like they're sold in like 20 minutes. So I would definitely work with a realtor. You can just ask people for recommendations or like look them up on Facebook. Another thing I would recommend is looking at the bones of the house and not just like what it is when you walk into it. So many houses are outdated. They still have all of the stuff that the old owner owns in it. So they might be filled with furniture, and they might be like dirty looking, and they might not look like your dream home like right off the rip, but just look at like, okay, what are some things that I really want? For me, I wanted windows. I wanted the ability to make it pretty open concept. So our house is relatively open. I know it's not like open concept really, but it feels really open. I don't feel super boxed in. That was really important to me. You can very, very easily change things like paint colors, floors, all that stuff. So just look at like the structural design of the house and see if it's something that you can picture yourself and your lifestyle in. So that would be my biggest tip. Don't just look and be like, oh my gosh, this house is like all dated and like it has wallpaper. You can so easily change that. And sometimes if it's a super outdated house, you can get it for a little bit cheaper. So that is all about our home buying process. Hopefully that helped a little bit. I tried to touch on a little bit of everything. Like I said, I can only speak on our personal process, but let me know if you have any more questions down below. I'd be happy to do a part 2. Like I mentioned, we are in the slow stages of starting to look for our next home. So I'd love to take you guys along on that journey. Make sure you follow if you want to see more of that, and let me know what video suggestions you have down below. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.